Hi there. I'm glad you're here. Welcome to Beyond the Frame. I'm your host, Joe Parente, and I've learned some of my most valuable life lessons from my favorite TV shows and movies. Sure, these works of art entertain us, offer us an escape, and even tap into our emotions, but there's one E that's often overlooked, Ryan.
And that's educational. If viewed from a different perspective, these stories and their characters can help us to learn and develop as human beings. I'm your host, Ryan Vanderhei, and it's our mission with this podcast to help share these unique perspectives with you so that you can grow from the show on our Christmas episode here.
Holiday cheer. So the topic of today's discussion, It's a Wonderful Life and the power of being kind to others. So as always, here's the warning. A ton of spoilers, but if you haven't seen this 1947 movie by now, my God, where have you been?
Right.
So proceed with caution if you haven't, and be sure to leave a like, rating, or review wherever you hear us or see us, because it really helps us grow the show. So Ryan, shall we begin?
Let's do it. Let's dive into some Christmas cheer here.
Let's do it.
The answers that you're looking for are lying just beyond the frame.
So, this was my first time watching It's a Wonderful Life.
Wow.
I don't know how I've gone this long. It's a classic.
But you did it. Yes.
And after as watching, I was like, oh, I've seen that finale, that final scene before. Like, maybe in like film school, whatever it was, but I've seen that final scene before. It's very iconic. But first time watching it, and it got me thinking.
Yeah.
Can you think of anybody in your own life who is selflessly kind like George is? We need more Georges in our life. We need more in the human population.
I totally agree. And again, as always, that's not a rhetorical question.
No, that
I know
is a
you. I know
legitimate
you mean
question. Yes.
that. I think I've been really fortunate in my life to have known some extraordinarily kind people. My mother was one.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
So we're both going to go mother. Okay. Got it.
Well,
Love
I think we're incredibly fortunate if we're both saying that.
Listen.
You know, I think we kind of won the lottery in that sense.
I agree without question. There's not a day goes by that I take it for granted.
Yeah. Good for you. Good
I
for
agree.
You. And you do let her know that, right?
I do let her know that as many times as I can.
That's important.
So your mom, how did that, just her, how she treated other people, how did that manifest itself? Like, how did you recognize that she was a George?
She, by how people responded to her. She was, she could be very cordial. She could be kind of bubbly, but my mother was absolutely an introvert, completely an introvert. But when you'd sit down and talk with her, she would really look at you. She would really acknowledge you.
Really
she would
listen.
really ask questions. And too many people, as I get older, I see it more and more. The way I think of it is like their eyes roll back in their head and they just talk about themselves endlessly.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine calls that the affliction. And
they've got the affliction.
exactly. And my mom didn't have that. And in that sense, she touched a lot of people. So it might not have been that she was giving money or, doing whatever.
Of course.
It was just how she was with people felt extremely personal. And you could tell also, we saw this when my mom passed away. The outreach was extraordinary.
Yeah.
Even before that, she got cancer the first time. She survived 19 years after fully metastasized lung cancer.
Wow.
And was given a death
amazing.
sentence, and she lived another 19 years.
Wow, that's
And
great.
the outpouring when she got cancer the first time even blew her away. She couldn't believe it. It was overwhelming for her.
It's kind of like
Yes, it is.
what happened in
It
the end of
is.
this movie.
It is very much so.
Which we'll get to.
And you with your mom? How does that?
Yeah, I love you sharing that. I think our moms probably have some resemblance to one another. So that's nice to hear that from you. And maybe that has a reasoning behind why we turned out the way we did, huh? Why we
sure.
get along the way
Yeah.
we do. Who knows?
Agreed.
But yeah, my mom, same. I mean, the way she is with people, She consistently puts her family, friends, children,
Mm.
all ahead of herself and her own happiness, much like George does in the film. She even, forewent her own career, college, personal goals, anything like that to be a mother. She raised me and my sister that way. There's just countless times that I can think of throughout my life where she's put me ahead of herself and has made great sacrifices in order to do so. To a fault, I might add. She sometimes gets used, taken advantage of because of this selfless nature and this kindness. So you got to be careful in this respect, because people will, sometimes take advantage of that.
Sure.
And take it for granted, really.
Right.
And she sometimes puts herself in compromising situations. Because I can remember it just with her kindness, compassion, and empathy for me, and her wanting to do well for me and to be a good mother, went even to the lengths that she got herself in trouble. I can remember after my parents got divorced, I was like 15, and obviously we had to downsize. We go from a 2-income household to a single income household. My father was the breadwinner. He was the one who made, the money. So now we just have hers. And rather than go to something she could afford, like a small, maybe 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartment somewhere, she stretched herself a little too thin and bought a house because she didn't want me undergoing a drastic change like that. She was trying to protect me. It came out of a good intention, but then bills can't get paid, her car gets repossessed, she's got to file bankruptcy, sell the house, all these things happen, and it all stemmed from this selfless, kind-hearted decision to try to maintain the lifestyle we had to protect me from what reality was. She knew, but then she didn't. I was young. I was 15. I was barely a teenager and just kind of going through life. I think she felt it's enough. He's got to go through the divorce. My dad moved. That was enough. I don't want him to also have to. Now we're, moving into a tiny little apartment. We're used to this big house. So I really respect her for and acknowledge her and try and give her the love and the flowers I can any chance I get, because she's a George. She is a George.
Wow. Beautiful.
So I love that we have that in common.
Me too.
And again, super grateful. Not at all lost on me how rare that is.
I love hearing all that. Good stuff, man.
So let's get to the movie, shall we?
Okay.
So as a quick review here, I know it's an older movie. Maybe you haven't seen it in a while.
Yeah.
So George.
So yeah, played by Jimmy Stewart. Kind, compassionate, he empathizes. He's empathetic.
Yes.
There we go.
Yes.
He's from a small town, which is funny because it was all filmed here in LA.
Right.
His father owns a local building loan, which in town, like savings and loan, which is constantly being strong-armed by a bitter rich old man named Mr. Potter.
Yeah, great.
He has a younger brother who's well-liked, and he himself is dreaming of finishing college and getting as far away from the small town as possible. Bedford Falls, I believe it's called.
Bedford Falls, yeah.
On the eve of the brother's graduation from high school, he has a wonderful evening of bliss with a young woman named Mary. And towards the end of the evening, he gets the news that his father has had a stroke. He isn't doing well. He later passes away. Now the fate of his father's loan building business falls to him.
Yeah, that's a great setup there. Love that. So we're going to get into our first scene. So we've set things up, and now we're about halfway through the film, just about halfway through the film. George and Mary get married, and as they get in the car to leave the town and head on their honeymoon to Europe, the trip he's always been wanting to take, a bank run is taking place in town. And George takes notice of this. For those of you who don't know, because I didn't when I first saw it, when the Great Depression happened, out of fear of losing their money, everyone went to the bank and withdrew all the money that they had, and which they called this a bank run. So this bank run is taking place in town, and George sees this, and he sees that his father's building and loan place is closed. So he goes over, opens it up. Everyone's waiting outside. Everybody, come on inside. And then Uncle Billy pulls him aside and tells him that he closed because the bank came asking for the loan. And so he had to give them all their money. They're completely tapped out.
And it's
zero.
Exactly. And it's really important to note that in the olden days, banks physically kept money. There was nothing digital or electronic.
Yeah.
Because right now,
cash.
Right.
It's coins.
Branches only have so much money. But back then, it was important for them to have a lot of cash on hand.
Yeah.
And once they ran out of that cash, that was it.
You couldn't go
That's all
withdraw
they
money.
had.
Didn't have it.
Right. They had to physically have the money to back their loans.
Right.
So if they don't have the money to back their loans anymore, like if they have loans out and the loans get called, which is what happened, trouble.
Yes. So all their money's gone. And so Mr. Potter calls and offers George a way out.
Yeah.
Says 50 cents on the dollar, all this kind of stuff. And of course, George refuses it. And then Potter says, and this is important, if you close your doors before 6 p.m., you'll never open again. So if you close the bank to the people,
Right.
you'll never open again. So what does George do? What is a man like George to do?
Do tell.
So George goes out and addresses everyone who is scared, understandably so. And they all say that some guy comes up and's like, Potter's giving you 50 cents on the dollar. I got cash right here.
Right.
And so everyone's like, oh, we're going to go. So everybody starts heading for the door. George jumps in front and he tries to talk them out of it and kind of say, like, we all need to stick together. You know what happens if Potter takes over? Like, your house was, remember, Joey, your house was broken and he cost you all this money. Like, he tries to give them perspective. And next thing he knows, everybody's like, well, where are we going to get money? You have no money. And Mary just holds up the stack of cash
That they were going to use on their European vacation.
Use for their European honeymoon.
Yep.
And he doesn't even miss a beat. He just jumps over the counter. Yep. Hey, everyone, here we go. I got $2,000. And then the first guy...
He was a piece of work, wasn't he?
He doesn't budge, man. He says, I need $242.
And there are quite a few people in the bank. This
bank is
$2,000 got to go a long way.
Yeah, there's 40, 50 people in there or
exactly,
more.
Exactly.
And George is kind of like, well, come on, man. Like, how much do you need to get by? And he goes, I'll take $242.
Yeah, exactly.
So
10% right there.
George isn't going to deny the man.
No.
So he gives him the $242.
Yep.
But I absolutely loved what happened next.
Yep.
So the next woman says, I'll take $20.
$20 would do it.
20 will do. And and George is excited. There we go. 20 it is. And then the next woman comes up.
Yeah, that was sweet how she said it too.
I'll take $17.50.
Yeah.
And George just reaches across the counter, gives her a big kiss on the cheek. And then we flash to 6 p.m. and they close the doors. So they made it to 6 o'clock.
With $2 left.
With $2 left. What was remarkable about this scene was how, due to George and Mary and their kindness, this act of kindness they had to, everyone's down on their luck here. Everyone's scared. Nobody has money to get by. They're talking about they got health, medical bills to pay. They can't pay the mortgage. Their husband hasn't worked in a year. All these things. And George and Mary, out of the kindness of their hearts, are going to take the money that they had for their honeymoon. They just got married, and use it to help everyone.
And George's been dreaming of getting out since he was a little kid.
This is everything he's ever wanted in his life. He's got the woman of his dreams now.
That's
They're
right.
married, and now it's him and her are going to set off and make his dreams come true.
Yep.
But it's not about him.
Nope.
And that's always been George and how he's looked at things. It's not about me.
It's
the
about
bigger picture.
The greater good.
It's the greater good.
Yeah.
And so I really loved in that moment how everyone starts paying it forward. That first guy was a dick. Let's just lay that out there. That guy was a dick. $250?
Yeah.
Jesus, man.
Yeah.
But everyone else was so compassionate
Yeah.
about not only, there's two things at play here. Not only is have George and Mary, because the second woman I think says, she even literally says, but George, it's your money.
Right.
He's like, oh, don't worry about it. I know you'll pay it back.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and so
Yeah.
not only that, but then they're thinking about everyone that's behind them.
Yeah. True.
The person in the back's got to
With
get
the
enough to
exception
get
of the
by.
dick. Right.
The exception of the dickhead.
Everyone else is thinking.
Everybody else in that room, there's a person in the back who's going to be the last person to come up.
That's right. And we
And
want
they
them
need
to
to-
have something too.
They need enough money to get by. And so all it took was that first initial kind gesture that George is so has done his entire life up until this point and continues to do so.
Exactly. And part of what I liked about that was he wasn't driving home. He wasn't at all touching on how important that was to him, that money.
Right.
He was letting that go completely. And this was really about, we don't want Mr. Potter to take over this town.
Right.
We want all of you to have your dignity. Let's be calm. Let's think collectively and be in this together.
We have to stick together.
And think of each other.
Yeah. Community.
These things, where are they today? I don't know. But
I so wish that I mean, this is why movies like this exist, right? This is why these stories need to be told, is because this stuff is so important. You know, it's
It is.
important to have people like George and to have people who look beyond themselves and who think about other people around them and how other people might be affected. You know, it's not just about me. And that was never George's MO, and that's clearly not Mary's either. We see what she does at the end of the film. We see what she does here.
Yeah.
It wasn't George's idea.
no, it was
George
Mary's.
didn't say, hey, wait, I've got money I can use. Hold on, give me one moment.
Right.
It was Mary that held up.
Right. He didn't have to convince her at all. She was right there. Yeah.
Man, in my mind, I'm going,
Awesome.
man, I got the right
Yeah.
girl, didn't
Yeah,
I? You know what I
totally.
mean? In the
Totally.
moment, like, if you
Yeah.
are a step ahead of me,
Yeah, exactly.
you know?
Exactly.
So they just, you know, they were right for each other, and that extended so far.
It did. And
It goes a long way.
they set a beautiful living example.
Yeah. And
You know, it wasn't just words, it was actual actions. That was their personal money.
And I think sometimes we need that. We need to be reminded of that. Because in that moment,
Absolutely.
everyone's scared.
Yeah.
Understandably so. That makes complete sense that everybody in that room would be afraid of their future, of what's
Yep.
going to happen, how they're going to provide for their kids, how are they going to... There's so many things that can cloud. You're not thinking about, oh, I got to make sure everyone else is getting...
I totally
It's
agree.
survival mode.
That's right. Well, one of the things that struck me, I might have this as part of my notes later, and I'm just gonna cut myself off here in a sense. But to me, there was a particular mentality of just us, and there's kind of I might be getting a little ahead of myself in certain ways saying this too, but understanding like with a strong middle class, we all thrive, and that's what it felt like. This was a very middle class group of people who are just trying to get their kids educated, raise kids well, raise them so that they're safe and that they're healthy and that they have a good opportunity in life.
Right.
And this scene to me was just about the notion of a rising sea, all floats sink. There's a better way to say it, but all ships rise.
Right.
With the rising tide.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, this was represented so beautifully in the scene, even if I didn't say it very beautifully.
I thought you
know,
said it
I mean.
majestically.
Okay,
I
but
thought
you,
said it
get what I'm
majestic.
saying.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
I just love that mentality that was behind it, the largesse behind it, and the thinking of others behind it.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. And we're going to talk more about that, and
Yes,
about
we
George.
are.
But before we do, we got to take a bad guy break.
Let's do it.
We're going to, usually we lighten things up. Now we're going to dampen things down because this movie's a lot of, a guiding light. And a lot of it is, feel good. But we're going to bring things down for
Let's
a
do
second.
it. Let's bring it down.
let's
This is
get
a
into the
bad guy break
nitty-gritty.
after
Yeah,
all.
it's a bad guy break. You got it. So as always, 4 hints the year, the genre, the setting, and the actor to pick for you to kind of try and see if you can guess this selfish bad guy. Not selfless like George.
No,
The opposite.
quite the opposite.
So the year that this film came out is 2000. Y2K, baby. The genre, psychological horror.
Wasn't it, though?
The setting, 1980s New York City. And the actor who played this character is Mr. Christian Bale.
I didn't know he wasn't American when I saw that. His accent was so perfect. He was
Right.
so incredible.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was so incredible. I'm like, who is this dude?
Yeah.
Wow.
Uh-huh. And boy,
You
was
learn
he
he's from
phenomenal.
Wales. It's like, what?
So
Yeah.
George, Joe, I just called you George. George is on my mind. So Joe, do you want to tell the people who this character is?
Yeah, Patrick Bateman from American Psycho. Man,
What a movie.
what a movie.
First.
He was amazing.
He was so good in this. He's my favorite actor of all time, by the way. That's just
Right on.
my favorite actor of all
Love
time.
that.
Mr. Christian Bale.
I don't blame you. He's
He's a
so
chameleon, this
impressive.
guy.
so impressive.
He's a
So
he can just
impressive.
morph and shapeshift into
God, the
any.
machinist. Come on.
And then he did right shortly after that. He did American Hustle, where he was like overweight and gross.
That's right.
So how do you?
Oh, amazing.
I don't know. Some people just
that
have like a
guy's-
body that can just morph into different things, and he's definitely one of them.
Stunning.
So Patrick Bateman from American Psycho has developed these ideas of what someone should be. These standards that he sets for himself.
Mm-hmm.
And when someone doesn't meet those standards, he's pretty disgusted with them.
Yeah.
Who are
Yeah,
you?
he
You're,
is.
you're,
Yeah.
you're the pond scum.
Yeah.
The,
totally.
the glue, the gum on my shoe. And not only that, but he's jealous and envious of people who do have things that he doesn't have.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who's more successful,
Mm-hmm.
who's gotten better this or better that, he's completely envious. And this starts to manifest itself in this psychotic behaviors and fantasies that he kind of plays out in his head. And this stems from this kind of complete lack of empathy and inability to see, understand, or connect with people who are different from him. He's entirely a selfish character, which is the perfect
Foil,
parallel,
if you will.
the antithesis of
Absolutely.
Joe or George. God,
No,
damn
it's
it.
okay.
George,
You
Joe.
absolutely crushed the bad guy break.
He is
That-
he's
you
the
just
exact
crushed
opposite.
it. That's such a perfect example.
Appreciate that, man.
Yeah, that was well done.
And that's
that
2
was
for
well
2
done.
for you. You're batting.
True.
You're batting like 350 now.
I'm back in the game, man.
You're back in the game, man. So let's get back to this movie, shall we?
Yeah, and the scene I'm going to talk about is the finale. Where to start? You know. So I'm going to do a little bit of backtracking here just to give it context. So George has always wanted to leave Bedford Falls, and he had the aspirations of traveling the world after college. Never went to college. Never traveled because his dad had the stroke and he got married, and then we just heard about why he didn't go to Europe on his
Yes.
honeymoon. So on Christmas Eve, George's uncle went to the bank of his nemesis, who owns everything in town,
Mr. Potter.
Mr. Potter, and he loses their $8,000 deposit, which I looked up is equivalent to about $132,000 today.
Ooh, that's a lot of money.
So
That's a lot of money.
this will foreclose their bank, and George will go to jail. He will be liable for this. So George goes to his nemesis, Mr. Potter, for help. And Mr. Potter, that mofo, played dumb, knowing he was not only going to capitalize on George's misfortune, but that he himself physically had the $8,000.
Yeah.
Such evil.
Yeah.
George goes home full of resentment because Mr. Potter won't help him.
Yeah.
Yells at his wife Mary, insults his kids. He was brutal.
Yeah.
And
Brutal in that moment.
I mean, that was like, whoa, is that Jimmy Stewart? Who possessed him?
Yeah, that was,
you know?
everybody's got a limit.
And right, and he
was
was
at his
clearly over it.
Yeah.
So he runs off to get hammered at a bar, and he prays for help. He eventually goes to a bridge in town to escape this mortal coil and instead ends up saving Clarence, an angel, second class, who was sent to save George. Clarence throws himself in the water so that George has to save him. And of course, George being George, he does save him, even though it's, freezing out, what have you.
Right.
Clarence proceeds to show George how Bedford Falls and the people in it would be without him. And let's just say it's grim. I thought that was so beautifully done.
Yeah, and it's worth saying that George wishes he was never born.
Very good
and
point.
that's what leads
Very
to
good point.
Clarence is like, oh, okay.
Very good
you
point.
You want to know?
Right.
All right, I'll show you.
And it starts with his little brother drowning.
Yeah.
Which was early in the movie.
Yeah.
So, and the druggist who he saved, that was quite a scene. But anyway, We're not here to talk about that. So meanwhile, while he's with the angel, Clarence, if you will, and this is taking some time, Mary and his son Billy are out in the town rallying it to donate whatever they can to save the savings and loan and George from going to jail. And they do it in spades.
Do they ever?
It's amazing. Yeah. So people in the town all knew that George put others first, and they seized on the chance to give back to him.
Absolutely.
And so this shows a sense of community, like we were talking about, that has, to me, been dwindling in our country for years.
Sure.
And to me, this scene transcends politics. It transcends ideology. And the best part to me is that George had no expectations at all. He wouldn't even think of asking people in the town for help.
Yeah, like that would never be his first thought.
Never. And that's part of what made this so beautiful, was that he was in trouble and he just thought, yeah, I am going to go to prison. He didn't think, first he went to Mr. Potter and he thought that's my only option.
Right.
And Potter wouldn't help him. Told him he was worth more dead than alive because of his life insurance policy, which was worth $15,000.
Right.
So that was part of what drove him to, not literally, he walked, but drove him to the bridge.
Yeah.
To ultimately end his life, because my life will have more value if I'm dead. Although they wouldn't have gotten the policy if he committed suicide, so that wouldn't have worked out. But anyway, that's beside the point. It was
suicide's a crime in this town.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So it was. The ultimate kind of pay it forward. It was, part of what was so great about that scene was Jimmy Stewart's character was so appreciative to be, once that nightmare, if you will, ended for him of seeing what life would be like in Bedford Falls without him.
Right.
And he's brought back, because he finds Mary, who was a spinster librarian, and he tries, Mary, it's me. And she's, get the, bleep away from me.
Get the heck away
You're
from
free.
me. Yeah, I don't know who you are.
So once he's brought back to current times, he's probably going to go to jail a happy man. He's thinking, I've still got my kids. I've still got Mary. Okay, I'm going to go to prison, but my God, this life is so precious.
Right. It's yeah.
His appreciation level had
skyrocketed.
Truly skyrocketed.
Yeah.
And saw what a wonderful life he had. I couldn't help but say that.
Yeah.
And I thought that was extraordinary. And so just to see how everyone wanted to give back to him, I think people probably jumped on that. And you could see, actually, they absolutely did, because all these people come to his house and they loved him so much. They were thrilled to give him this money, which equated to much more than, we don't know how much, but it was supposedly much more than $8,000.
Right.
Dollars.
Right. There's like a guy that comes in and like dumps out a whole lot's worth.
And was it his uncle who said that he was the richest man in Bedford Falls?
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the scene. I totally agree with what you're saying. It's the perfect amalgamation of what happens when someone, it comes back. It comes back. Like you put out this good energy, you're kind to people, and you hope that it comes back to you.
But let me make a point about that. With you hope, see, I think part of what, I'm not saying you're not saying this, double negative, but what makes it so great about George is there's no expectation.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Just want to be clear about that.
No, I'm glad you said that. Yeah.
It's giving it with no hooks.
Yeah, George wasn't being kind because he wanted it in return.
But one hopes that he would get it in return is what you're saying.
Of course. Yeah.
Just want to make sure I understood.
Yes. And thankfully here that was the case. That everybody in the town came back to his aid. You know, everyone remembers that scene we talked about in the bank.
Yeah.
Where he put his life on the line.
Right.
Where he put his money on the line. His harder, you know, like his money.
Yeah.
For everyone else. Like everyone remembers that. Everyone remembers the houses that he built for people. And you didn't pay your loan? I didn't take your house. Like, no big deal.
Right.
Like all these kind things that he did, selfless actions that he took, all came back, thankfully, to help him when he was in need, you know?
Because even though he was in the money business, he wasn't about making money. And that's where Mr. Potter thought he was, like, either had a screw loose or something.
Yeah, you're a bad businessman.
Yeah, you're a bad businessman. Well, he was saying that about it. George knew his father was a bad businessman, but his father is the one who set the precedent.
Right.
Of caring about others. And this isn't just about how much money can I and the savings and loan make, but it's about helping people get on their feet, help them get started in their lives, help them feel financially secure, which is giving someone a massive gift if you can do that.
Yeah, this is the perfect illustration of the theme we're talking about, which is how far kindness can go, the power that kindness can have. And I'm with you, that seeing the look on his face when this, like you said, nightmare was finally over, when the angel finally grants him to go back to reality, we'll call it, where he's actually alive and everyone's there. He doesn't even care that he's going to go to prison.
Yeah.
I think there's even a moment where he's like, yes, I'm going to go to jail. You know, like it's fine, because being in this life where everyone, I have my family, I have my wife, I have my kids, I have the drugstore owner and my uncle, and I can go see my mom and all these things. That is so much worth it. Like you underestimate like those kinds of things, or you take it for granted when you don't see it in that way. So it gave him a really fresh perspective on that, and just the fact that, like I said, I had seen this scene somewhere, and I immediately recognized it when it came on. I was like, oh, that's this movie?
Yeah.
Because this is such an iconic
absolutely
scene that just beautifully illustrates what happens when you when you're kind to people.
When you spread the love.
When you spread the love.
Yeah.
Peace and love. You know? Exactly. So yeah, I'm with you, man. I absolutely agree. So why don't we give these people a little interesting fact about this movie, huh?
For me too.
Time for a little did you know?
Okay.
So when I actually talked to my grandfather about this. He's the one who told me, and then I looked it up. So we watched the movie, and then when I was on FaceTime with him the other day, I was like, I saw It's a Wonderful Life. And he went on and raved about it. And then he said, did you know that this was Jimmy Stewart's return to acting after serving as a pilot in World War II? And I was like, what? He was like, yeah, he had a private pilot's license, and then when the war broke out, he volunteered and then literally went over and fought in Europe as a pilot in World War II, and then comes back and resumes his his movie career. Amazing. And so I on IMDb I saw that he was nervous about the phone scene, the kissing scene, his first kissing scene with Mary, because this was his first on-screen kiss since his return to Hollywood after the war. I mean, that's understandably would be a little bit nerve-wracking that I've just seen war. Yeah. And now I have to like be intimate and kiss this woman on screen. And so under the director, Frank Capra's watchful eye, Stewart filmed the scene in only one unrehearsed take, and it worked so well that part of the embrace was cut.
I did read that.
Because it was too passionate to pass the censors at the time.
I love that. I love
So they
that
had to
so
cut it short because it's like, man, this is too much. We're gonna get like rated R here. We gotta
That is hilarious.
we gotta bring this back a little bit. But I just thought that was fascinating, man. People back in the day were built different. I mean, that's just bizarre.
For
to
sure.
go see active war,
Yeah.
and then come back and make a film like this.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine.
I can't either.
It's hard to fathom.
It is.
So shout out to Jimmy Stewart.
Agreed. Yeah, he was truly a hero.
Came back and made
Yeah.
one of the, most iconic films
Yeah.
ever made.
Exactly. And a great holiday film.
And a great holiday flick.
Yeah.
In this here holiday episode.
So, if you like that one,
Yeah.
I've got some recommendations for you.
In the spirit of It's a Wonderful Life.
Exactly. It has nothing to do with the holidays whatsoever, my recommendations. But these are movies where the good guy wins. Now, granted, there's a lot of movies where the good guys win. So I thought I'd make it as diverse as I could.
Okay, I love
I
it.
think we should actually watch these 5 as a marathon at some point.
Okay.
Okay. The first one, The Dark Knight Rises. Christian Bale, of course, defeats Tom Hardy and saves Gotham. Yippee. Loved that one. That was so
that
good.
movie.
Christopher Nolan. The next one is Star Wars 3. Go, Luke.
Star Wars 3.
Yeah. This is
Return
after
of the Jedi?
It was after that.
Empire Strikes
Yeah.
Back.
It was after The Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So this is when it was just a trilogy initially.
Yeah. Before we
okay.
got the prequels.
Exactly.
Right.
So Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and I'm talking about the 1971 original.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
That's one of my mom's favorite movies of all time. Yeah.
And as we know, Wonka is not the good guy here. This is
Right.
Charlie.
Sure.
Charlie is our good guy.
Yeah, he
is-
is the selfless one.
Yeah. He is the one who wins.
I love that movie.
The next one, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga.
Oh, interesting.
Because Anya Taylor-Joy was the good one.
Yeah, she was the
Good
good one.
girl.
Yeah,
I loved that.
fought for the people.
And the last one of my favorites, The Princess Bride.
The Princess
Rob Reiner's classic from 1987,
Ooh.
starring who was a newcomer, Robin Wright,
Oh, I love Robin Wright.
and she was so great in this one.
Haven't seen that.
We need to see that.
Okay.
Yeah, we need to get you to see that one.
Okay,
that is
Princess Bride.
absolute classic. Anyone who's seen it out there is going, I know what Joe's talking about.
All right, I love it. I love it. Great recommendations, Joe.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
was unsure if you were going to go with just straight holiday films
Nope.
or if you were going to give us something different, but I love that you tied it back to the
To the good guy winning.
to the good guy winning.
Yeah. So just to give you a recap, George was selfless, kind, caring, and he always thought of those around him. And he wishes he'd never been born, and then learns that he had never. What had
Had he?
happened had he not existed? So he saved his brother's life, and without that, his brother dies. Doesn't save all the men on the transport in World War II.
Yep.
The pharmacist, Mr. Gower, poisons a kid by accident, goes to prison before he becomes a panhandler.
Yep.
His uncle loses his business, ends up in an insane asylum, etc., etc. It goes on and on. So we must not underestimate the impact our life has on the people around us. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
And if you are kind and empathetic to the people around you, it will come back to you one day. Hopefully when you need it the most. And this is the power of being kind.
Oh, is it ever? So,
Yeah,
shall we wrap things up?
let's
here?
do it.
Thank you so much for joining us today on our holiday episode. I hope everyone has a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever it is you celebrate. Happy holidays to you here. Thanks for coming along this ride and this journey with us. And remember, as always, you're the main character in your own life. So don't be afraid to take a step back and take a look at the bigger picture. Because sometimes the answers that you've been looking for are lying just beyond the frame. See you next time.
Peace.